Guys, UFC 278 is just days away, and if you're looking for your own big win this weekend, head on over to DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of UFC. If you're a new customer, you can bet $5 on any fighter to win, and you're going to get $200 in free bets instantly. It's that simple. You can even try DraftKings Same Game Parlay for even more action. Combine multiple bets from the same fight, like which fighter will win, how long will the fight last, and more. Same game parlays give DraftKings customers a shot at making their bag even bigger if it all hits. DraftKings is safe, secure, and reliable. Best of all, you can deposit and withdraw your cash whenever you want. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app right now. Use the promo code SONNEN. Bet $5 on any UFC 278 fighter to win and get $200 in free bets instantly, no matter what. That's code SONNEN this Saturday at DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of UFC. Kamaru Usman, 205 pounds, go. I mean, that's how this is going to work. Kamaru Usman is not going to go and fight at 205 pounds. Kamaru Usman's not going to fight for the World Light Heavyweight Championship. But the debate is going to exist. So what do you say? Now, it's really important that you break this down because Kamaru Usman, who is a great, not 70-pounder, not great of our sport. He is an athletic great. He's an athletic genius. He's letting us in on something here. Now, Jon Anik was weighing in on this, and Jon Anik stated for the audience, hey guys, don't at all be confused. Kamaru Usman is not overlooking Leon by talking about 205 pounds. Now, this is relevant because Jon Anik meets with Kamaru Usman. He meets with everybody on the card before he goes and does his job. So he had his meeting with Kamaru, at least the way I envision. Now, he's coming out and he's sharing with you guys, but he has the same interpretation that I've shared with you for a little bit, which is Kamaru Usman is bored. Now, that's rude. That's not a nice way to say it. Those are words that Kamaru has never used. And if Kamaru heard me say it, he might even deny them. Kamaru may not know this about himself. He's talking about 205 pounds. He's talking about Canelo Alvarez. He's talking about these monumental challenges for a reason. And to have a guy as cloaked and success as Kamaru Usman, that he would walk away and go up to 205 pounds, or he would leave the sport completely and go to boxing, man, this is something very rare. We've seen it. We've seen it one time. One time that I could think of it was Jon Jones. Jon Jones, being so successful, he gave a world championship back. He just gave it back. They didn't even make somebody beat him for it. He gave it back. Now, Kamaru Usman isn't to that point. But this is what Kamaru at 205 pounds is about. Look, he's not specific. He, over time, has used the word Yuri Prochazka. We made it very clear it wasn't calling out Yuri. It wasn't something to do with Yuri. It wasn't a personal beef. Yuri had the belt. He also made it very clear if Glover gets it back, then it's going to be Glover. Touched on the fact of if Jon Jones returns, I go for Jack. What I'm sharing with you, if we don't have to worry about losing Kamaru Usman and losing him to 205 pounds. I don't personally believe that Kamaru even thinks that that's a hope or an opportunity. He's setting and putting his mind in a position. The greats will do this. The greats will go and wrestle in the Olympics for the first time, or they'll go box in the Olympics for the first time. But they've played it through 1,000 times. When they were 9 years old, they were envisioning and practicing for that match. So you get all of this talk about experience. Experience isn't helpful in the fight game. In other sports, it is. I understand that, right? You played soccer 2 times, you're taking on a guy that's played 20 games. Just on logic alone, the guy that's done 20 games is going to have some advantages over you. All sports work that way. And there's a balancing act, and there comes athleticism, and there's some DNA, and there's things that throw off our recipe, but they're a really good place to start, except for combat. The more you do something, the more of yourself you will leave out there. Not that you will pick up and not that you will gain. And it requires absolutely everything. Just to have the physical conditioning to be able to go hard for 15 minutes. I mean, I'll just share this with you. And most people will agree. Anybody that's ever tried wrestling will talk about that's the hardest sport I've ever done. Even if they just played. Even if their cousin was a wrestler or something and it's Thanksgiving and they move the coffee table and they go at it for 15 or 20 seconds, they will come away and tell other people for the rest of their life about how difficult and what cardio that required, and that they were sore for 4 or 5 days in places that they didn't even know that they had muscles. Like that, that's a very real talk. And I came up and I lived through that for 15 years. And could never do it the way that I wanted. I could never push the pace in a 7-minute match for absolutely all 7 minutes. Wanted to. Just never got to that point. Always had to have strategies. Always had to find a position, slow a match down, get out of bounds, untie your shoe, whatever it was. And most people are like me. And they were tough and they wanted to do it and they learned how to do it. But if they were being honest with themselves to push the pace for 7 minutes as their coaches had intended, or like the guys that they aspired to be like, they probably never got there. Then you come into combat, which is a minimum of 15 minutes. But the guy's not trying to score on you. He's trying to damage you. It's very different. There's nowhere to hide. There's no shoe to untie. There's no I have a bloody nose. There's no my coach stopped the match. These things just don't exist. Very, very difficult. Very few people that can ever push themselves and get into that shape. Then you have the Kamaru Usmans. Now we're having a conversation about less than 0.1% of the population that will either be successful enough to be booked in a 5-round contest or will be popular enough to be at the end of the night being a 5-round contest. It's just very rare. Of those people that are booked, that are even given the opportunity, if you go back and you look how many people are in the 5-round club, you will be stunned how few names you have. The UFC has a Hall of Fame. I'm not going to call people out. I'm just going to give you a really good place to go look. The UFC has a Hall of Fame, the most coveted spot that our industry currently recognizes. Go look at the Hall of Fame and find out how many of those people have never gone 5 rounds. They've all been booked for it. You go and look how many people actually did 25 minutes. It's a very small group, and the reason I bring this up and the reason that Jon Anik is meeting with Kamaru and telling you all, Kamaru Usman's eye is not off the ball. He's putting himself in a position where he can remain hungry. He's beaten everybody, and he's getting ready to do it a second time. What do you get if you beat Leon? That's very important this Saturday. You would rather have that than not. It sets up a platform and gets you ready for the next one. You talk about legacy and all this silly things like this. It affects your pay. It affects your ego. You'll lose the belt. Like, I mean, there's an answer to it. But there's another side of it is how could you make believe that Kamaru Usman is hungrier to do something that he's already done? Just based on logic. How could you make that argument and believe that you're right if you juxtapose that against the hunger of Leon, who is not in on participation, who is not a multimillionaire, who is not talking about legacy and chasing the shadow of George St. Pierre. He's not in those things yet, and he wants to be, and he's worked his whole life to get there. How can you reasonably believe that these two have the same hunger? Which comes out. The first round's about athletics. After that, you're in a tough guy contest. And when you start talking about championship rounds, you're talking about a very, very rare thing. So Kamaru Usman is having to create scenarios. Sell himself on the idea, if I look good enough, I'm going to be up at 205. And what do I get at 205? Not I get to be world champion. I already am. Not I get to make more money. My contract's already done. What do I get? What is Kamaru Usman truly after? He's after a challenge. He's after trying to put himself in a situation, even if it's make-believe, where he could get hurt. He could get embarrassed. He could get beat. He could get held down against his will. He could get punched and touched more times than he punches and touches the other person. That is an experience that he's not had at 170 pounds inside the octagon. He's literally trying to create it. He's not going to love when he hears me say, Chael, why are you telling people I could never get the fight? You're not going to get the fight. Dana's not going to leapfrog you over 185 pounds. Not to mention, if you go and succeed at 205 pounds, yes, that feels good for you. You just ruined a whole division. If a 205 pounder gets beat by a 170 pounder, you got a big problem on your hands. That's a hole in the boat that you aren't going to patch. I could go on and on. I don't feel that I need to. We understand that he's not going to get the opportunity. He may not understand it, but that's what this is about. That's precisely what this is about. Chimaev was talking about Kamaru the other day. A few days ago, Dana had come out doing media and said, if Chimaev beats Nate, he becomes the #1 contender. Matter of fact, if Nate beats Chimaev, Nate becomes the #1 contender. We'll have to get this whole contract thing Worked out, but he's setting that fight up to draw into Kamaru. So they asked Chimaev about it. This wasn't a celebratory moment like most guys would have. Oh, great, I'm one away. I better get this one right. Chimaev took a different approach and said, Usman will retire before he faces me. He's so scared of me. He will count his accolades, he will rest on his laurels, and he will walk away. He will give the belt up before he ever gets in there with me. Well played. Very interesting. Kamaru would not do that, just so you understand, but very well played by Chimaev. And it's one of these spots where, believe it or not, the one guy that Kamaru truly wants to face is Chimaev, or somebody else that provides the same narrative that Chimaev does of invincibility, of undefeatedness, of youth, of hunger, of aspirations. He can get a line on him in Vegas. Put Kamaru Usman as the underdog. Oh, Kamaru would love to be the underdog. You have no idea. You all told Kamaru he was going to get beaten. You found the person. You could convince the community to the fact that they would put their money where their mouth is. Oh, he'd be the happiest guy in the world. That's all he wants is one night, one time, one training camp where it truly is the house is on fire and everything could be taken away from him. That's what he needs to be motivated. He's sharing that with us. He's letting us in on this. He's not using the language that I'm using. He's using a different speak. He's using the speak of champions. He's using the speak of the greats. It's a very interesting thing. And it's also an ingredient. As much as I want to defend him, as much as I want to tell you, keep your eye on this, it is an ingredient to some degree of every major upset you've ever seen. Every big upset in sport. You can go back to Buster Douglas versus Mike Tyson. There is an ingredient, regardless of cause, regardless of what the demotivation was, regardless of what the distraction was, whether it was self-made or not, every upset has an aspect of this. And Leon has been equally as calculated. Leon is not few. All Leon wanted was this fight. Once he got the fight, he hasn't promoted this. He hasn't built it up. That's okay. I normally give a guy a hard time. Leon's seen that I have a demotivated champion. I have a champion who's searching for motivation. He's attempting to seize on it. You're going to see a close match here. I don't know that you're going to have a 3-2. I don't know that you're going to have a Colby Covington style situation. Colby Covington versus Kamaru Usman is the closest, dirtiest fight I have ever seen part one. But the scorecards represented it as well. It's 2 apiece going into the fifth. This could be 5-0 Usman. In all fairness, this could be 5-0 Usman. But they're going to be close. Leon's not going to get held down. He's not going to get pinned down. He's not going to get pummeled. He's not going to keep his hands down and get clipped. He's just not. He's going to make you work. He's going to stay aggressive. And when you start playing a game like that, when you have good, close fights, and every MMA coach and every MMA athlete will tell you, we do this in practice during sparring rounds. When there's 30 seconds left, the coach will yell, 30 seconds left. And if you could just win those last 30 seconds, in theory, you could win the whole round. Judges are human beings. They're going to remember what they saw last. A judge, as good as he is, when he's sitting there watching 5 minutes of action over the course of an evening, 11 fights, and hours have gone by, he's going to remember what just happened like any other human being. If you could steal those last 30 minutes, you can be very creative. We have guys in the sport that are masters of winning that last 30 seconds by whatever happened previous 4.5 minutes. As long as they kept it tight, as long as they kept it close, they can pull away. It's just one of those situations. You can never win by enough. The spread never gets too much. Nate Diaz versus Leon, I think, would be proof of that in the 5th round. What could have been. Whatever happened before that big shot, had there been a follow-up, I mean, I think I'm proving my point. Jon Anik met with Kamaru. He's coming out to tell you guys the same thing, but it's for the same reasons that I am. It's in defense of Kamaru Usman. There is an appearance that he's taking his eye off of Leon. I'm trying to share with you. The greats, they speak a different language. They have a different talk. This is what Kamaru's doing to stay hungry and to stay motivated. Is it a mistake? That's a totally separate conversation, and that's between those boys on Saturday.